essentially what NIFTMINT does is we are a suite for the marketing team and the technology team at a brand to be able to easily integrate NFTs into what they do.
In the world of NFTs, there's a lot of noise. So when you find some signal, it's really important that you focus in. And in many ways, this episode is part of my focusing in on the future conversations around NFTs. If you ask someone today on the street, what's an NFT? I would say 1 out of 10 people will probably tell you it's a monkey JPEG. And to be fair, maybe they're not wrong, because that's how a lot of people see it. And I think my guest would agree that many brands are still chasing the PFP craze of the Bored Apes from 2021. But the reality of it is, that ship may have sailed. And so the way that we use non-fungible tokens as we move into the future is going to be different. And I really think Jonathan Blanco, my guest today, and his company NIFTMINT are on the forefront of figuring that out as a way for brands to be able to properly leverage this technology to communicate their value. And in as many words, create a better experience. Because what customer doesn't want a better experience? And before we hop into this, please know, towards the end of the episode, it gets kind of loud. Jonathan and I put down mics when we were at Permissionless in Austin, Texas, and we just recorded this episode. And towards the end, there were some other content creators in the room that were creating video. So that's what you'll hear. As I said earlier, Jonathan and NIFTMINT are truly signal amongst the NFT noise. I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is More Than Blockchain. Jonathan, welcome to More Than Blockchain. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for linking up. We are live from Permissionless, as it were.
It was, yeah. And what's awesome is that we met live for the first time at the last conference that was here in Austin.
We did. I was actually thinking about the intro I'll do on this, and I'll probably mention that. But in that intro, it's interesting in conferences because I don't know where you fall, and I want to ask your opinion. Do you feel like you get more out of the events, like the inside the conference? Or do you feel like you get more out of the side events? As far as networking, let's focus on networking.
That's a great question. I probably get more out of the event itself inside of it, but I'm incredibly focused when I'm in the event. So the things I'm doing is kind of awkwardly looking at people's stomachs because that's where they have their badges, right? I would look elsewhere if the badge was elsewhere, but you have to read who it is. So I have a pretty good idea of who I'm trying to contact, get in touch with when I'm going to an event. Maybe it's an investor or a company or a brand or a partner. So anytime I see someone with that on their badge, I go up to them. And I've been in this space long enough too, where people recognize me from other events that I've spoken at or conferences I've attended, or just my content, on LinkedIn. And so, for example, when I was walking over here, I was a couple of minutes late because I ran into someone who's really high up at one of the blockchains. And I had interviewed him on my podcast like 4 years ago. And then we just had never met in person. And so I was like, oh, hey, I want to chat. So I can't stress enough the importance of attending conferences. I think it's different for different people, of course. I don't know that necessarily you want your entire developer team coming to a conference. I'd probably want them more developing. But for me, just strictly speaking from a founder context, it has been the most fruitful way that we've made connections, that we found customers. Our very first customer we found at a conference when we first started the company. We have investors that we found at conferences, and we have received grants as a result of attending conferences. So I think it really just makes how you're working the conference.
That makes total sense. I think everyone comes in with different ambitions.
Yeah.
And yeah, we met literally in line to go to a club on the last night of Consensus. And in Consensus as well, at that event, I met a couple other people that I still keep up with on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So it's like you kind of never know when you talk to someone at an event where it's going to lead to. And then also you can never see, even when you're looking down at someone's stomach to see their lanyard and their name tag, you can never see who's their second and third people that they could introduce you to. Because
100%.
even today we were like walking through the hall, and I had previously worked with Mercy Corps, and so crypto philanthropy is still something that I'm not as actively, but a little bit more passively involved in at this point.
Yeah.
But you're like, hey, I want you to meet this guy named John,
Yeah.
and this is what he does.
Exactly.
And that's not something I would see in your lanyard. And so that really speaks to the power of networking at these events that, like, in some sense is kind of a numbers game. Like, you want to talk to a bunch of people, but at the same time, you also want to maybe develop a couple relationships and take them a little bit further, have a couple of touch points.
Totally. I think, yeah, exactly. You have to be just open to conversation and to what can happen. And what's funny is that, here I am joking about looking at the stomach for the lanyard, but when we were in line, neither of us had lanyards, right? We just happened to say hello to each other and be cordial with each other. And you told me where you were at the time. And I was like, oh, I'm familiar with Mercy Corps. I'm from Seattle and I've interacted with them before. All things that don't happen if you just stay in your shell and, don't commit to that. Again, I guess it depends like what you're looking to get out of the conference. But for someone like me, who I'm looking to always get connections and grow. And the reality is I think it's really important to not be transactional in your networking. And this is for conferences or outside of conferences because, again, depending on what you're going to be doing, it's a long life of this. And so I've been in the industry of the Web3 industry for the last 6 years. I've been working in retail technology for the last 12, maybe 14 years now. And, I find myself that my goal is to really lead that intersection. So those are two communities that I'll always be a part of. So where I'm going with all of this is that maybe I meet someone who is, I don't know, a sales rep and, quote unquote, someone I don't really want to talk to because I don't want to be sold to. That doesn't mean that person, 10 years from now isn't the president of said company or whatever. So like, that's not why I'm nice to them. I like to think I'm nice to them just because I'm a nice person. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I think you just got to really, treat people for who they are, and they're just humans, and be nice to everybody.
Yeah, and I think that that's super true, especially here in the Web3 space. You never really this is the one space where if you judge a book by its cover, you're going to get burned 10 out of 10 times. Yeah. And I think that maybe tech started that. Like when I think back to even watching, what was it, the Network? What was the one with Jesse, where he's Mark Zuckerberg?
Oh, The Social Network?
The Social Network.
Yeah.
Even just that, and him walking down the iconic Harvard steps with his sandals and his hoodie, and he's worth $1 billion, and we're back in 2007, 2008. I do think this new wave of tech has kind of changed the way people dress and how you engage with them. And like, if I think back, like Steve Jobs made jeans okay in boardrooms, right? Yeah. Maybe. And now it's just like ridiculous. And so it's always interesting for me at these conferences, like, is the suit powerful or is it the board shorts? And like, and like the bucket hat. And so thinking about NIFTMINT, you had talked about how you had professional experience before that. It sounds like in e-commerce. Yeah. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I've been working. So I've grew up in the back of a retail store. Go home from school and do my homework in the back, and then help stock shelves. And then I worked with brands, or as a brand, or in retail, pretty much my entire adult life. I co-founded a vitamin and supplement store, and did that for about 5 years. And then got involved with selling on Amazon and e-commerce at that time. But I slowly just realized that I didn't want to be involved with physical inventory. And the main reason why is because if you've ever owned an LLC and you've ever owned a lot of inventory, you pay taxes on your inventory, right? So as an individual. And so here I am paying myself barely anything, but we have 600,000 in inventory or more, and you're getting taxed on that, which is not fun. And it just kind of made me realize, like, this isn't really scalable overall, which is what got me involved and interested in the commerce side, or I should say e-commerce side of things. But I noticed same thing for me is like, okay, if I'm doing e-commerce, I'm still dealing with inventory, and that's something that I didn't want to deal with. So the tech side started to get really interesting to me. And so I just tried out a couple different ideas here and there, got involved with an early stage startup that was doing social commerce. So buy now buttons in Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And this was back in 2014, which is super early back then, because it took till 2019, for example, for Instagram to actually do this. And now commerce and social is like just super common. We're just accustomed to that. But then I spent a little bit of time working at a big box retailer, and I led an innovation group working on some sensor technology. We did some things with water sensors, but then also some things with beacons inside of stores. But at that time is where I started to discover crypto, because I had a little bit extra time on my hands, and I was really interested in it on a personal level. And then it just started to really make a lot of sense for me because of my understanding of e-commerce. So I was like, wait a second. When we're talking about these networks or these blockchains, we're really just talking about it's the same as an organization or as a brand, and then they have these points being the cryptocurrency. And so that's how I rationalize it. And I was really able to kind of grasp it. It's like, yeah, the more you participate in the network, you get, points, et cetera, or crypto, for mining, that sort of thing. So long story short is I started a company with some people where we were doing loyalty points as crypto, and learned a lot through that process. It was really early for brands. Most brands didn't really understand it. It didn't help that Bitcoin went from 20K to 3K during that time also. And it also didn't help that we attached ourselves to a blockchain that never launched. But all that being said, I still very much believe in that use case. To finally get to what we're doing at NIFTMINT is because of these experiences, because of working with brands for so long and offering them or providing them early stage tech, and then even with a loyalty points at crypto, at the end of 2020 or early 2021, I started to notice that brands just really understood NFTs. And maybe I should retract that. It's not that they understood NFTs. They were very, very interested in NFTs and wanted to figure it out. And I had never seen that in any other wave of technology inside of in the commerce vertical that I've been a part of. And so that was really encouraging. So I literally just put up a landing page on my TF Labs site. So I have another company called TF Labs where we just do events and conferences. Started that by accident. We can talk about that at a different time. But we do like events and things like that. And anyways, we did some consulting and started noticing this opportunity here. And I was like, wait a second. Yeah, brands get this. They want to look into it. Put a landing page up. I said, hey, we do NFT advisory for brands and for artists. And we just got a flood of people inbounding us. And so we got some artists. We had some people want to do PFP projects. And basically, we would either respectfully decline when PFP projects came up to us. Like we never did an NFT drop for a PFP project. And we talked to a lot of even the bigger ones. But fundamentally, it just went against what we were, one, interested in working on. Two, don't at me at this, but we think a lot of them were using tactics that looked securities like. And while we are the belief system that NFT is not a security, it doesn't mean you can't treat it like a security, right? And so, a lot of these projects were doing things like saying, hey, get this to have like ownership rights, or get this to get like profit distribution, or this will go up in value, or here's our royalty, or here's a secondary market and it's going to go up. We're already starting to see a couple NFT projects that are getting hit for this. So long story short, we didn't want to participate in that. But what we did notice again is we had really big brands reach out to us, like one of the largest soda manufacturers, one of the largest beauty brands out there, a smaller division of one of the largest car companies out there. And we started talking to these brands, and yeah, they wanted to figure it out. But a lot of them, unfortunately, went down the path of just emulating the PFP avatar craze and doing a version of those. And I think most of the ones that did that failed. I can't tell you how many times we talked to brands and they said, we want to be the next Bored Apes. And I would say, respectfully, you will never be the next Bored Apes. That's just not going to happen. They did a really good job with how they, put that together and coordinated that. And there's a lot of coordination, behind the scenes of people doing things and connecting with each other, et cetera, that a brand's just not going to be able to emulate that community overnight. That just won't happen, unfortunately. But what you could do is really think about this of how do we tokenize our real world assets? And if we think about this from a tokenization of real world asset standpoint, what we're really talking about is the evolution of how people consume content. And that's really what we're ultimately focused on overall. While our software and while we can support NFT drops and token drops and these sorts of things, in our point of view, that is the smallest opportunity when it comes to NFTs, is doing a token launch. It's interesting, don't get me wrong, but we see that as 1% of the total opportunity. The real opportunity is, how does every single product become tokenized? How does every single thing that you buy become tokenized? And you might think that sounds crazy, and it kind of sounds a little crazy right now. And maybe it's not everything. Maybe it's not, this $10 t-shirt that I'm wearing right now, but anything that you care to keep for an extended period of time that has some level of meaning or significance to you, maybe a pair of shoes, a wallet, a watch, a bag, sunglasses, jewelry, your car, etc. These are all things that 100% should be tokenized. I know I kind of went on a rant there, so I'll take a breath so you can talk.
No, that was really good. And I talk about this a lot. And one of the things that I've found at Permissionless is the gap between perception and reality.
Yeah.
The perception is right now from everyone not here that crypto's dead, that it's not going to go anywhere, that the SEC is going to regulate it to oblivion. The reality of it is, I think we're going to get a Bitcoin ETF in the next 4 to 5 months. The reality of it is, I don't think Gary Gensler holds any water. for many people in tech, and even within government agencies and across like our elected politicians. And when you talk about the perception and reality of NFTs too, I think the perception is that they're all scams, which unfortunately I think was backed up honestly by a reality of 99% of them actually being that. And even some of the PFP projects right now are really floundering. None of them are doing well if we're just looking at
100%.
floor prices. But at the same time, we could say that they're all going to die, but there's like 10, 15, maybe good blue chip projects. One of them I'll shout out and be positive about is Doodles. I still think that they're going in the right direction. They've even changed the way that they talk about themselves to not be an NFT project, I think, to skirt some of that security FUD that we've been seeing around digital assets. And so when someone comes to you, or when you engage with a small business and you're primarily just working with e-commerce brands, I don't think you're doing any brick and mortar, right?
No, but because we don't technically work with like SMBs or small medium businesses, and so anybody that would only be like strictly brick and mortar, on the most part, is going to be like an SMB. So we wouldn't necessarily work with them, though. We do have the way our product works is it could work in a brick and mortar scenario because you can claim, you can do fun things to claim things and things like that, of course. But sorry, finish your
yeah,
question,
no. So,
your thought.
but I was going to ask, you come across, let's say you're at Permissionless and you're walking around Austin, and you come across someone that runs an e-commerce shop and they're doing $1 million in revenue a month. I'm not sure they're serious enough to get your attention.
Yep.
And they're like, you know what, Jonathan, I hear what you're saying. But in their mind, they have their narrative, their storyline is that the digital isn't as important as the physical.
Yeah.
And I feel like what you're saying is, no, they are. And they're going to only, for me, my thesis would be, it's only going to become more important as social networks basically allow AR, VR, mixed reality type engagements with your Gucci shoes or your Gucci bag or even your Lambo. Like it could look like it's on fire if you like show your camera. So how do you break down that FUD? Because I think that must be a part of the, or is there a sales process in which, or is there a conversation you have that kind of circumvents that but hits on their real pain point?
Yeah, that's a really great question for lots of different reasons. The way I'd like to break that down is essentially thinking about it strictly even from a sales process, like forget about crypto for a second. So we have zero intentions of converting someone who's an anti-believer into a believer, like zero. And I personally think it's a huge waste of time for people to do that overall, because a lot of time doesn't mean you can't educate them, like slowly drip or whatever, or create content, et cetera, do all that. But like, you'll never find me in a sales meeting, trying to convince someone who's like anti doing minting or tokenization. That's not for me to do. And the reason I say that is because there's enough people out there who are very much interested in figuring this out for their brand that thankfully, I don't have to waste time in converting people or figuring out how they do that. Now it's more a conversation typically about like, how are they going to do that? Which is equally as important, of course, overall, is like, how they'll actually, get this implemented. The problem that we ran into in the past, which I think is what we're coming out of, going to your point about like, hey, like this crypto winter, like you watch the media and crypto's dead altogether. I think a couple things. People need to remember that there's two sides of crypto, right? So there's crypto money and there's crypto tech. And so crypto money right now might be like stagnant or feeling like it's not doing a lot. I think that changes, of course, and I'm a big proponent of Bitcoin, and I think Bitcoin will have a very interesting change here soon for the better for those that hold it. But I also think the technology side is really interesting, and it's funny because like me as a personal person, like I prefer Bitcoin from as like a money standpoint, and then from a programming perspective, the reason I love NFTs so much is I really honestly just view it as the evolution of digital content. And so if we go back to this analogy of like how a brand might use this, it's like, imagine we talk to a high-end watchmaker, Rolex, right? And we're having like how you're talking about. It's like, hey, Rolex, do you believe that that customers are going to want more digital products in the future than they do at this moment in time? Hopefully, they're going to say yes, because clearly consumers are going to want more digital products as they already do, and that has increased, pretty much daily. And then and the question I ask brands all the time is like, hey, do you think that you'll offer more digital products in the future than you do now? Any innovative brand is going to be like, yeah, of course we're going to offer more digital products. We're already looking how to figure that out. Okay, so then do you want to offer a PNG, a PDF, or a JPEG? Or would you rather offer a better PDF, PNG, or JPEG? And so what does a better version of that means? It would mean one that is immutable, that is programmable, that has you could track the authenticity, that remains provenance. that starts to sound a lot like an NFT, because it is, right? Like all an NFT at the end of the day is a digital wrapper around a digital content file. It's like the best way to think about it. So the issue lies is it can't be complex for the end consumer. One of the narratives I've always disliked in Web3 is onboarding people into Web3, or education is fine, sorry, but like welcoming people into Web3, this onboarding, because it comes from this notion of like, hey, we have like a broken system in how the UX is, and we need to like fully show you how this works overall, as opposed to offering solutions or products that are just better than the incumbent solution, right? Like at the end of the day, that's, if you want mass adoption of products, you need to have that. That being said, anybody that holds their own keys and holds their own Bitcoin keys is always going to have an advantage as from a personal level. But that's you who's educated, who's taken the time, who's in the top percentages of people trying to figure this out. The average consumer is just never going to do that. So they need to have the tools in place. I won't talk about it from the money side because that's not what I'm doing, but on the content side or the product side, essentially what NIFTMINT does is we are a suite for the marketing team and the technology team at a brand to be able to easily integrate NFTs into what they do. But more importantly, is not treat it like an NFT, treat it like a digital product. So I'll just run through this real quick and then love to get any more questions from you. But essentially is every single e-commerce platform has an app store. Most of the payment networks have app stores. Most of the loyalty networks have app stores, integration partners. We see them as channel partners, so we offer our NIFTMINT solution inside of their app stores as an embedded solution. So that way, any brand that's using these products can one-click install onto their storefront the ability to be able to create a smart contract, mint the NFTs, and most importantly, add it as an inventory item that can be tracked within inventory, that can be sold and be sold the preferred method that they prefer already. We don't force them to sell it in crypto or to have crypto on their books or even utilize crypto, because we handle that all for them in the background. And then similar with the wallet, the brand doesn't have to have a wallet. The consumer doesn't have to have a wallet. We do a custody solution for both. That being said, if there's anybody who's very crypto centric and wants to manage their own things, no problem. At that point, go ahead and connect your wallets, and you can transfer out the NFT and you can token gate it back to you. But for everybody else, it remains there, because the majority of the population do not care about NFTs and will never care about NFTs. However, they will care about the value or the benefits that come from that, and it's just strictly product experience. So any consumer cares about a better product experience. And so if you can provide it in a clean, easy way, that's when I think it just becomes the norm.
Yeah, I was reading on the website and just kind of looking at stuff, and I think it's super important that you can just pay with a credit card.
Yeah.
Do you guys also do Apple Pay? Is that
well? So here's the thing: is that we're not a payment company, and so what we do, because we don't want to disrupt the flow from the brand. So whoever they use,
whatever they use
continues
as their POS. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is a funny thing, and this is how I know that someone doesn't understand brands who might be our competitor, is the language that they talk and how they speak about the brand. One of the most difficult things to get any brand to do is to change one of their core infrastructure items. Getting them to change their e-commerce system, their POS system, their loyalty system, their payment network. It's near impossible to get them to switch it. It doesn't matter how terrible it is. It doesn't matter if you have lower fees. It's so ingrained into what they do. That's why you might go to like a big grocery store and you look behind the kiosk, and it's like a really ugly, clunky UI, like black and white lettering, because they're so ingrained in how they do it, and they might do millions of dollars per store that they can't afford for it to go down, right? And I've had that happen to me before, where I might host an event or, use a product, and some new incumbent company comes with like, we're the same, we're just X percentage cheaper. It's like, that doesn't matter to me, because I can't afford for this not to work. And I can't take the time to to learn how to use your new tool if it ingrains into what I do. So the reason I bring that up so much is because, what has to happen with consumer adoption overall is it has to just work into their new flow. The only organization that I can think of that has really changed consumer behavior quickly in the shopping experience is Amazon, right? Like Amazon made us all believe that we have to get our packages the same day or the next day. And so if we don't get it there, it feels way too long, right? Buy now buttons, that was Amazon, or instant buy, like they had the patent on that for one-click purchases, right? So which is interesting because I think Amazon is actually doing some things here soon. They've been talking about it. There's been some articles that have been coming out about it. I've never spoken to anybody on the team. I'd love to speak to someone on the Amazon team, though, if you'd like to talk to me, because I think they're doing a lot of things similar to what we're doing, but just internally for Amazon. And again, it's not about like, do people want an NFT from the brand? They don't. But do people want great experiences from the brand? They do. They really do that. So if I start buying articles of clothing or products from a brand and they give me a digital equivalent to it, is that what gets me to buy it from them as opposed to the other company that's not offering the digital equivalent to it? I'm 40 and I grew up in a world like at the beginning of all like new innovation, as I've always felt like. And, my parents are the opposite, where like new innovation hit later. But then my son has like lived with basically the digital world in front of him his whole life, right? He's 10 years old. There is things that he loves that he's never seen or touched or felt, right? Where, someone in an older demographic might say like, no, for me to appreciate art, I have to see it, I have to touch it, I have to feel it, even though you're not supposed to touch your paintings, right? And so I think that's what anybody that kind of has like like a standoffish about what I'm talking about here is you got to think about like how has your content consumption changed and evolved, over the years, and like how do you interact with things that you care about differently than you did when you didn't have a mobile device. I mean, the mobile device obviously changed everything in that regard. So yeah, it's not necessarily about trading NFTs. It's not about trying to flip NFTs or any of that kind of stuff. It's about the evolution of content, how people consume it, things that people care about. Do you have a digital wallet, with your digital goods in it? And then that unlocks behavior. It really is a tool to unlock marketing behavior. But then also like keep like really key information. Like there's no reason why your warranty information can't live in an NFT, and the manufacturing data, and like who made it, when it was made, et cetera. And having that unlock other things. You basically just have a better web, right? At the end of the day, it's not about flipping. It's about how do you have a better brand experience, and just the tool sets need to be in place, of course, to make that happen. But these are essentially the keys to do it.
One of the things I was actually talking to Grant about, who I know you've met now from Not Crypto Bros, was the ability to talk about this world we're in of crypto and NFTs, but specifically, I guess you could focus on NFTs because I do think they can be totally separate from the financial product side of it. Whereas like cryptocurrency obviously is like, is it down? Is it up? Should I buy or not? Years ago in development work I was doing, I came across a program called Teach Aids. And I'll shout out Teach Aids I don't know if anyone from them is listening, but Teach Aids was fascinating because it was basically tasked with, I think it came out of Stanford, the programming. It was tasked with going into Africa, parts of Africa that are super, super conservative, to talk about teaching AIDS. The thing is, you couldn't talk about sex to teach AIDS. And normally here in the United States, it's like one of the fluids that can some of the fluids are sexual fluids that can lead to AIDS. But the second you talk about that with a conservative culture, they shut down. And all of a sudden you can't now provide that education and that information. So I always think of the same thing. How do you talk about NFTs without talking about money? Yeah. And the second you flip and you have that challenge, then you get into exactly what you're talking about, which is like, no, we just want an improved customer experience. What brand doesn't want that? And if a brand doesn't want that, then obviously we never want to work with them. Right. That makes no sense. They're not into growth or just seeing what else is out there. And I even think back, and you and I are roughly the same age, when I was a kid and we'd go and play sports or whatever in the summer, we'd ride our bikes and we would go buy sodas. And I remember I would always get the Sprite, not because I thought it was better than Coca-Cola, but because at that point the marketing was just on point, and underneath the cap you could win like an extra Sprite or whatever. Right. So it's kind of like what you're saying. If there's the choice between these two brands of shirts, of nice hoodies, and I've seen this on NIFTMINT's site, one also offers an NFT, digital collectible, whatever else however you want to call it, that may just be the thing that pushes it over. Yeah. Like we humans are all about getting more value, whatever that's perceived to be. And the question I have for you is, as we move forward into the world, I have always said, like once Instagram, thinking about how when we met with Crypto Philanthropy, my thing was like, once Instagram had NFTs and now they don't have NFTs. Yeah. Meta, Mark's always playing with my emotions with this stuff. But, in the future, I think people are going to be showing their flex as far as what they're giving to by just posting their NFT. Yeah. It's like, here's Mercy Corps holiday NFT from 2025. This means that I gave $500 and now I get to show you and you know it's authentic.
Yeah.
And you know what, Jonathan, you're coming over for Christmas, coming over for Navidad. I got this for you. It's an NFT from Save the Children, and I wanted you to have it. You know, I know you've got children or whatever, or it's from Venezuela or something. You know, it's from Latin America. I know you're Hispanic, and so the question is, how do you think the social currency aspect is going to play? Like when someone buys that nice sweatshirt, where's that going to play? Is it going to be on social media? Is it going to be, where are those things going to be able to be kind of like, the driveway for the Lambo, if that makes sense?
Well, I think with the example that you gave on the Mercy Corps side, or like, hey, like I donated to this thing, or and here's the NFT for it. It's that behavior actually already exists, right? It's like, here's a certificate that I got sent to me in the mail, or here's like a plaque that I got because I participated in this, or here's a mug, or whatever it is. Like there that already exists from a behavioral standpoint. So again, having like a digital version of that is not crazy. It's just basically like, yeah, hey, thanks so much. And like, again, we're not necessarily calling it NFTs, or they're not. It's like, yeah, here's just, this record of this taking place. And oh, by the way, everybody that keeps these things or has these things, like they get a discount to this said experience, or like the holiday dinner or whatever it is, right? Now it becomes really like this marketing, behavior, or this marketing introduction. So as far as like how like people show their NFTs or where that goes, I think it'll actually be a little bit more private, but I think it'll be, I guess my belief is that it'll be very similar again to the behavior that we have now, right? So if you're the type of person that takes pictures in front of, your really nice car and you post it on Instagram, then you're probably going to do that with like your digital collection, and you're going to share it publicly. But if you're someone that doesn't, and you just have these things, you're going to keep it in like your own private, type of wallet and type of experience. And I don't think anybody should be listening here and thinking like, oh, like, I'm not going to flex what I own or whatever. It's like, it's not about that, right? Like people are going to, do what they want to do. But, like I've actually, I've owned 2 4Runners in my life. My first 4Runner was my first car out of school, which was like, when I was in high school. That was, like a 10-year-old 4Runner. And then I got one like almost 20 years ago, right? I just love 4, and I still have that 4Runner. And I bring this up because like, hey, like that'd be kind of cool to have like an NFT of it, or my digital twin of it. It shows like when I purchased it, when I have it. And then every time I go to the service business, like that's what gets updated essentially. And so, I'm talking about use case because like that might sound silly, but again, it becomes like this why not use case. Because right now what happens is either managed inside of how the service station uses, their updating thing, or if I write it down on a piece of paper or Carfax or whatever. But, these are all things that essentially can be, tokenized. I've been on stage before, and I've been made fun of about this even on stage before, which is funny. But I love using my example that I call the dishwasher NFT. And I think in the future we'll have dishwasher NFTs. And anybody listening is like, well, why the heck do I want a dishwasher NFT? You don't want a dishwasher NFT. You're not going to trade it on the secondary market. You're not going to get royalties on it. You're not going to do anything like this. But when you do go to buy your dishwasher and someone says like, hey, do you want to get the warranty that comes with it? X amount of years, blah, blah, blah. And like, here is your manual and all that kind of stuff. There's no reason that can't just all live in the NFT, right? And so now you have your warranty, your manual, the manufacturing dates, all the specs. You have everything that lives in this NFT. And it just happens to have a cool image behind it. It has like a cool, video or GIF behind it. And now maybe you have a wallet that you have all your different household items that have warranties on them. And like when you click through, you can see your washer and your range and your refrigerator and et cetera. And so it's not about, hey, I'm going to trade these things. It's about how do I run my life more efficiently? How do I keep everything in one unified space? Because right now, the way we keep track of our warranties or our things is we have a drawer in the kitchen that has the manual of every single appliance. Okay. So, it's like, oh, that's not broken. That works. So like, yeah, of course. What also isn't broken? You could write books before the typewriter, right? And you could type books before the typewriter, and you could still type, before the word processor. And then you have, so it's like, why do you not want improvement on experience and improvement on these things? Again, it's just the heavy lifting part of managing crypto and managing wallets. That's what needs to change.
That is one of the things that constantly comes up when people come on the podcast, is looking at that. And so for your customer data, for all the people that have used the NIFTMINT APIs in the software, how many people are actually putting it into a Web3, they're Web3 literate? How many people are actually putting it into a wallet as opposed to just leaving it not on chain, but in their accounts?
Oh yeah. So it's roughly about 10% of people transferred out. But I'll be honest, like we're constantly working on our customer experience. And so we had like a huge prominent button, but a button that said transfer. And I think it was like 12% of people, it was like, or a little bit higher, were transferring out. And then we made it just smaller. And then it went down to like, I don't know, under 10. And so it's not that we're trying to hide it. It's again, it's like, maybe we were afraid that people see the transfer button and feel that they have to transfer it out, right? And so the UI decision or the hypothesis is like, hey, if someone wants to transfer this out, they'll look for it, right? They'll scroll down and they'll see. But if they don't want to, let's not make them think that they need to.
Yeah, you had mentioned also that I think in the timeline it was 2019, 2020, you were working on another project and you said that token or, that chain was never launched. It never saw the light of day, which happens.
Yeah.
What's under the hood in this? Is this Ethereum? Is this, what are you using?
It's funny because, because our company, the last company was attached to a different blockchain that didn't launch, that actually very much drove our intentions with how we thought about what we're doing here. We're chain agnostic, so we're available on all the various EVM chains. That being said, we're currently exploring Solana and Near to add. The reality is and Stacks, I should say. The reality is no brand is a maximalist of any blockchain. Like no brand wakes up and says like, I have to do a deal with this blockchain. So there's a really interesting opportunity, frankly, for every blockchain out there, to start building relationships with brands, build relationship with us, because of the fact that, they want whoever is going to provide them the best experience, and then who's ever going to help them and support them with marketing, et cetera. One of the reasons why Polygon has done so well is their BD team is phenomenal, and they've also, have incentivized different brands to be able to work with them, right? But they've done a really good job on their development, and it's a good, I think for sake and purposes of NFTs, I think it works, as intended. But yeah, I don't think any brand's gonna say if we don't do a drop with a said project, that it would prevent them from going.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that because I do hear people kind of pigeonhole themselves. And I own a Ute, and I've now seen Utes before I own them. I've watched them go from Solana to Polygon, and now they're going to go from Polygon to Ethereum. And some people would look at that and be like, oh man, they're like indecisive. They don't know what they're doing. While I believe that on some level you're always taking a gamble in anything you do in business, they're also just looking at where the market is right now. And I think they're trying to be first movers in where the future, skate to where the puck is going, not to where it is. And so I've kind of also seen that in Web3. One of the bigger things I wanted to ask you about is you have Bitcoin. If you go to and I'll throw this in the thing in the outro notes, you have Bitcoin on your Twitter. And for many people, I've noticed now that I work for a Bitcoin mining company, there's a huge cavern between Web3 and Bitcoiners. Yeah. And so, you've talked about you personally are really into Bitcoin. Is there any future where you think the Lightning Network, and I don't know if this exists now. I know that Brian Armstrong just said they're going to put the Lightning Network on Coinbase, which makes total sense. Have you guys gotten into ordinals at all, or using the Bitcoin protocol in a way to create digital assets outside of just owning Bitcoin?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, like I said, I think for me, a lot of people talk about decentralization with crypto and so forth. And my personal belief is that while there's lots of projects out there that are distributed or have decentralized elements of them, like there's clearly nothing decentralized to the capacity that Bitcoin is, right? And when, for example, on a standard traditional crypto project, look, there's Bitcoin and there's crypto, right? There's Bitcoin and there's crypto. And it's funny because I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, but I sort of am when it comes to from a money standpoint. Like I don't personally hold any crypto at all. Again, I'm saying Bitcoin crypto, right? I don't hold any crypto at all, but I do have crypto in like a small treasury to be able to pay for minting cost, right? Like, because it's operationalizing my business. So the reason I'm taking some time for this distinction is because I do unfortunately believe that companies or corporations do need to use crypto and not Bitcoin, unfortunately, at this current moment in time, from a business operational standpoint, strictly from the NFT context, right, or from the creating. And so I do think this creates really interesting opportunities for things to be developed on the Bitcoin network over time. And I'm trying to learn as much as I can about how, like, that can happen at scale. Some of the maximalists are not fans of Bitcoin ordinals because they think it clogs the network and it's expensive, et cetera. Bitcoin miners love ordinals because all those same reasons, right? It clogs the network and it makes it more expensive and they make more fees. But I find ordinals to be incredibly fascinating, just like the writing on the Satoshi. I really think, at least at the very beginning, there's an interesting opportunity for anything that's incredibly high ticket to be an ordinal. So if you do a digital twin, or digital product like what we talk about, and it's a high-end car, like those should all be ordinals. And I think it's good for I believe that that's good for Bitcoin personally. And I respect anybody that thinks that it's not, right? I think it's okay to have differences of ideas there. So I'm really looking forward to that. We're actually, we've done some ordinal stuff ourselves, and we're actually working on, at this current moment, is introducing the ability to be able to to write onto a Satoshi via the NIFTMINT platform. So right now you can auto-generate your smart contracts and you can create your own NFTs. And so we're essentially doing a similar UI experience for Bitcoin ordinals.
Yeah, that was a great answer. And we've really never gotten into like below, I don't know, other conversations about Web3 that are kind of higher level, I guess. But I feel the exact same way. If I'm looking at it as an investment vehicle, it's just Bitcoin. If I'm looking at it, how can I play in the sandbox that's Web3 that's changing every day? Then you need to have some Ethereum, Polygon, some other chains on the side to just be able to like stick your toe in and play. So that makes total sense. As we wrap up, can you go ahead and shout out where people can find you?
Yeah,
because you've got a nice internet presence.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter also, but I'm not as active on there. But LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, and I'm basically JG Blanco or JG Product on every platform. So on LinkedIn and Instagram. No, sorry. On LinkedIn and Twitter, I'm JG Product. On Instagram and on Telegram, I'm JG Blanco. So you'll find me on one of those. You can also find me at NIFTMINT.com. I host a lot of events myself, actually, in the Web3 space. If you happen to be in the Pacific Northwest, come join us. We do barbecues all the time, and we interview some amazing people. We bring people from out of town, and I travel a lot for events, so always happy to connect with people that way, too.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for hopping on. And it got a little loud here at the end, but that's because we're live from Permissionless. So thanks for hopping on.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I had a good time. And I'm glad that we met and then ran into each other again here. So
thanks.
All right, see ya.
Thanks for checking out this episode of More Than Blockchain. And please go ahead and check out the show notes, where I'm going to leave a bunch of links in case you want to get in touch with Jonathan. I'm going to leave his LinkedIn, his Instagram, his Twitter, and NIFTMINT's website. As always, please go ahead and follow us on social media at More Than Blockchain. And if you have not done so already, and I will continue to plug this, go follow us on YouTube. I put up exclusive content there every week that I think you'll find interesting. No matter where you're listening to the podcast, please go ahead and subscribe. And if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and share it with a friend, family member, work colleague. Thanks again for checking out this episode of More Than Blockchain, and I'll see you next time.